I'm a Mississippi racer. Might as well. I'm walking through a ghost town, y'all ain't playing my sounds. Don't tell me to calm down, don't tell me to calm down. Only time I go backwards is when I wanna moonwalk. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. We are who we say that we are. You were lost in the stars, and it's all from the start. Never running no pace, never on the right page. But we still read that book, and we still run that race. Ay, Mississippi racer riding out, no shortcuts, no time for that. Mississippi racer riding out till the wheels fall off, I'm driving that. Mississippi racer riding out, we'll stop burning, strike the match. Mississippi racer riding out, red light, green light, red light, good night. Ay, red light, green light, red light, good night. 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 Time to chill, don't sweat it.
Good morning and welcome. It is Coffee and Sports. It is the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network. Thank you so much for making us part of your Monday morning routine, whether you're watching live on Facebook, live on YouTube, maybe you're live on Roku TV. Thank you to those fine folks over at Northeast Sports Productions. We appreciate you being here. I am Chris, and of course, that over there is Mo. Happy Monday, sir.
Happy Monday to you, and happy Monday to everybody that's joining us live. Chris, March Madness is even madder than usual, but the biggest story, Major League Baseball. That story, that is the biggest thing in sports right now.
In case you missed it, Mo and I, we are now known as the Morning Squad. We rolled into the Saturday morning show with Mac and company. And, you know, I'm not going to say, but I want to say we dominated. I don't know if they officially gave the third point. I think it might have been like a pity give to the other guys. But I feel like we took the third point as well. But either way, we won. We walked in there. We beat the champs. They're no longer undefeated. I guess that makes us the champs, Mo. But one of the things that we took a little heat for coming out of that was our take on the Shohei Ohtani situation.
We did.
And we have a very similar take. We understand, Mo, that there is more information that needs to come out. We understand that, you know, we're not going to sit here and crucify someone that, you know, hasn't been found to have done anything wrong. In a situation where we don't exactly know what even was done. This is so early in this situation. What do we know? We know that the original story was that Shohei Ohtani apparently was trying to help out a friend who got millions of dollars in debt with an illegal bookie situation with gambling, and that Shohei Ohtani apparently fronted $4 million in change to his interpreter to bail him out of a sticky gambling situation. Then that story changed. To Shohei knew nothing. Shohei didn't give anybody any money, and that the interpreter was basically robbing Shohei Ohtani blind because he is a degenerate gambler, more or less. And he had no idea that he wasn't even allowed to gamble while being a part of the MLB umbrella. And I mean, it's weird, Mo, because he wants to come out and defend himself by saying, I didn't know I couldn't gamble, but you thought you could rob your friend? Like
right.
That was so weird to me. Like, you want to come out and make the statement of, I'm sorry, I didn't know I couldn't do that, but you didn't apologize for robbing your friend blind of $4+ million. Like, right. How is that not involved in the same apology? Sorry, I didn't know I couldn't gamble. Oh, that's it? You have nothing else to say? That's it. I didn't know I couldn't gamble. Oh.
And really, right, isn't the lead, I apologize to my friend of all these years, right? You start off with that. I made a bad error in judgment. I did something I shouldn't have. You could go down that path. And to your point, we're not saying Shohei Ohtani has been found guilty of anything. We're not saying he's guilty of anything. We literally are telling you what's been told to us, to the public, to the media. And what's been told to us is multiple stories. And I think that when you get multiple stories, you're allowed to use some common sense in deducing the information that's put out to you. Again, I get it. I just think it's odd that he was able to take this $4 million in multiple $500,000 wire transfers. Again, I get it. Shohei is filthy rich, but even the filthy rich, usually your bank will go, Mr. Ohtani, this is the second $500,000 wire from your account. I gotta ask, is this you just to make sure because we're covering our base, right? That's what a bank does. That's their job to make sure everything's on the up and up. And I guess that never happened, and that's unique. And it goes back to the debate that we also had on Saturday, where they literally in the third question that was asked, they made our point for us because what they were saying was he's being a good friend. He's being a good friend. Wouldn't you do this for your? Yes, but that would mean what he did would be wrong if that's the case. I think what you and I are saying is if Shohei Ohtani is indeed the victim, then the interpreter should face every ounce of punishment that's due him. All I'm saying is, and I think we're thinking the same, if he's anything other than the victim, then he's going to have to be punished. That's all we're saying.
And he's not going to be banned. He
Exactly.
probably isn't going to be suspended. If it is proven that Shohei Ohtani didn't actually himself bet on baseball or bet on anything, and I think the bets being made aren't even baseball related. I think the issue here is that it's through a bookie and it's an illegal bookie, and that's part of the bigger situation. I don't even think we're talking about bets made on actual baseball games. But if it's proven that, Ohtani didn't place any bets and he was just doing what it looked like he was doing initially, which is his interpreter got in too deep, and who knows, maybe Ohtani pays his interpreter a crazy amount of money. Maybe he's just making it rain on this guy because Ohtani's got the bags and he's like, listen, this is I take care of my people. This is my people. And maybe his interpreter is making money and he has the money to go be making 500,000, whatever it is. All right. But maybe he got in too deep. Him and Ohtani are tight. He told Ohtani about it. And Shohei was just like, listen, I got you. You need to knock it off. You need to get your life straight. But I got you. I'll cover the 4.2 million. Maybe that's all it was. But again, Mo, if that's all it was, you should still be punished by Major League Baseball. Nothing crazy. Slap on the wrist. A simple statement by Major League Baseball of, listen, you got to help a friend out. You do you. We're not judging you for that. We can't have Major League Baseball players making payments to illegal bookies. Doesn't matter why you did it. Don't care about the circumstances. We just can't have that. So as a result, here is a monetary fine that goes along with it. Please make sure you review our policy when it comes to gambling and activity that is connected to gambling, and we're going to move forward. If that's what it was, there should still be a punishment, Mo. That's it.
That's so simple.
And it can be undisclosed. And Mo, this happened back, and maybe JG can tell us when he comes on. This happened back in the mid 2010s with a pitcher for the Marlins. He somehow made a payment to a bookie. He wasn't doing the gambling, and he was fined an undisclosed amount from Major League Baseball, and that was it. He didn't actually gamble himself. I don't know who he was making the payment for, but it's a very similar situation, and he paid a fine and moved on. And that's what I see happening here.
And I think that's a great solution if indeed he paid for his friend's gambling debts. And look, just to put it out there, I'm going to remain where I am on the bigger picture. I do not believe that Shohei Ohtani in any way is going to be found guilty of anything. I do not believe that Major League Baseball can afford the face of Major League Baseball to be found. This is not me saying anything shady. This is just my belief. This is big. He's not just a guy. He's the guy. Okay? He's the guy. And I don't think they're going to let the guy get taken down. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I don't think he did anything. I don't think he gambled. I think he was just helping a friend out. And if you're sitting here this morning saying, well, Chris, if you really think he didn't do anything and he really is just helping a friend out, how can you sit here and think he should be punished? Because it's such a fine line in sports, right? Because Mo, it's not that far of a stretch between I helped a friend out and I was involved in the bets that were being made. And I'm not saying Ohtani was, but once you open that door and you say, well, Shohei was really honest with us. He was just helping a friend out. We concluded he didn't make any bets. We concluded he wasn't even involved in the knowledge of what bets were being made. So we're just going to move on from here. Well, what happens the next time an athlete is involved in something like this? And their response is, it wasn't me. I was just helping out Steve, my best friend.
Right.
He got in too deep, so I was just bailing him out. Well, it looks like maybe you made some of the. I didn't make any bets. I didn't know what he was betting.
Right.
He just got into. That's such a gray area. You don't want to open that door if you're Major League Baseball. So you have to continue to take the hard stance of you can't be involved in gambling at all. Now, in this situation, we determined that he didn't make bets and that he wasn't the one making bets. That's fine. But you still fine him, and you can keep it undisclosed. That's fine. Make it an undisclosed. Because, again, I don't think he was making bets. But once you cross into that world, now we have a situation. And, Mo, let's not forget also, the story has changed. And that's a big part of this.
Well, yeah, you just numbed it. He apparently wasn't bailing out his friend.
Right.
His friend's a thief.
So
you can't undo that.
We've gone from I'm helping out a friend to my friend is stolen from me. And that's where we currently stand. It's not like a situation of my friend stole from me and it was, well, he was scared that he was going to be made more of something than it actually was. So he tried to remove. No, we went the opposite direction. Looks like the truth kind of came out first. And now it went totally the other way. Where that's a felony. This guy could be going to jail for a long time if he stole from you. So what does that look like? Are we just going to walk the guys? No, he didn't actually steal from
right. And like you said, he said, no, Shohei paid for a friend's gambling debts. And then somebody told Shohei, you really can't do that in baseball. He's like, oh, well, in that case,
he stole from me.
He stole from me. Damn thief.
Can't trust anyone.
We're being tongue in cheek. We're joking around. Shohei Ohtani, to our knowledge, and let's put out there, he's not guilty of anything. But to Chris's point, if the story should shift again into where he was actually helping a friend out, we're not talking about him being banned from baseball. He put it out there. There's already a situation where somebody was fined an undisclosed amount, and leave it at that. And I think if the worst thing that's going to happen to Ohtani is exactly what you described. He'll be fined an undisclosed amount, a slap on the wrist, and we move forward. You are not going to mess this up with the biggest thing in baseball in the last 20 years.
And Gene does bring up a good point in the chat. Gambling is illegal in California. So no matter how this shakes out with Ohtani, whether there's a punishment, whether there isn't a punishment, whether it's a slap on the wrist, whether it's a blip and we move on, there is still going to be some legal ramifications for his interpreter, who apparently is making $4.2 million in illegal bets. So his interpreter most likely is not out of hot water, even if it does turn out that, he didn't steal from Ohtani, which I don't think anyone thinks he did.
Chris, I'm in the wrong business. If I knew that being an interpreter paid so well.
Right. You're right.
I'm just saying. To where you can get $4 million in debt and run. So you have to have a line of credit, right? When you start getting behind. That's the way it works. He's got that kind of money as man. Look, I should have been an interpreter.
For those of you who are wondering, Ohtani said yesterday that he will speak to the media today. So he is going to be speaking with the media later on this afternoon to apparently clear up this situation. So Mo, literally a developing story that will have more layers later on this afternoon, and we will see what that looks like, and we'll circle back here tomorrow and see where we are. Friendship, theft, we'll break it down.
But he's talking to us again, or he's going to talk to us live with his new interpreter, right?
Right.
I hope the new one knows gambling, not good.
No.
Not good.
We got JG coming on the show a little bit later this morning. He's running a little bit behind. He's a busy man. JG is a busy guy. So hopefully that lines up and we can get him on this morning. But let's pivot to this. So big NFL news over the weekend. Ladarius Sneed is traded by the Kansas City Chiefs to the Tennessee Titans. The trade involved a third-round draft pick going from Tennessee back to Kansas City, and I believe they swapped seventh-round picks as a result as well. Sneed, 27 years old. He is obviously a terrific cornerback in the NFL, Mo. So let's start with the Kansas City side of it. Obviously, when you are a championship team, which the Kansas City Chiefs are, when you have won back-to-back Super Bowls, which the Kansas City Chiefs had, and when he is one of the key components in your secondary on back-to-back championship teams, when you lose him, it is a loss. And I know that this is what fandoms do. You look at the Kansas City reaction over the weekend and after the trade. Well, it's just a cornerback. We can get a good corner in the. I get it. I get why you're saying what you're saying, but let's not degrade what he was. He was and is a good cornerback. He was a good piece of your defense. Okay, so let's start there. It is a loss for Kansas City, Mo.
Oh, it is. You're talking about one of the best corners in football, a lockdown corner. I could argue what he and Chris Jones do go hand in hand. For that defense. And I think that was their gamble, right? They knew that once they paid Chris Jones, they were going to be like, we can't pay him both. We can't. And look, if I were going to make a decision like that, I would have went with Chris Jones too. I would have, even though he's the older player. He's right at the peak of his career, and he's just a disruptive force, especially in the playoffs. He just gets better as the season goes on. So I do think it's a great loss. Will they try to replace him? Sure, they'll try to go out in the draft and address that, but that's easier said than done. You're talking about a Pro Bowl cornerback, not just a Pro Bowl cornerback, but a guy who can play zone coverage. He can play man. So he's a versatile corner. He can play in multiple types of schemes. So that's a great loss. But again, we are talking about one of the 2-3 best defenses in football. You lose your corner, it is a huge loss. But I think what they have returning, they're still going to be a top 5 defense in the NFL, I believe.
Now let's look at the other side, Mo. We have the Tennessee Titans. As a Tennessee fan, it's great to add high-quality pieces like Ladarius Sneed. And I'm not knocking that. I like the fact that Tennessee is going out because, Mo, when you look at a team and you say, man, we need to build a foundation, right? What do you need to build a foundation? You need a quarterback. You need playmakers. You need an offensive line to protect your quarterback. Then on the other side of the ball, you need a corner. You need at least one. It's great to have 2, but you need at least one. You need a pass rusher, right? You have to be able to get to the quarterback. And then once you get to the quarterback, you need to be able to lock down, at least to the best of your ability, the best weapon on the other side of the football, which is what your corner is going to do. So when you're looking at all the foundational pieces of a quality football team, cornerback is on there on the list. Now, it's not the top of the list, but it is on there. You need to have at least one good corner. So props to Tennessee for going out and checking that off of the list.
It's a great pickup.
But Mo, if I'm Kansas City, and I don't know who else was interested, I don't know who else made offers, if anybody, okay? But if I'm looking at the landscape in the AFC, and I'm going to give Sneed to Tennessee, I'm not worried. I'm not worried about that coming back to bite me because Tennessee is not a Super Bowl team. I would argue Tennessee isn't even a playoff team next season. They are in rebuild mode. So while having a corner is great, and while that's a good piece to the foundation, for right now, that's all it is. It's just a piece, the building block. Tennessee has a long way to go if they want to start being competitive. And I know there's some Tennessee fans in the chat, and you may look at your team and you may feel a little differently than I do, and that is fine. But Mo, if you're being realistic and you're looking at Tennessee from where they were last season to where they could be this season, maybe a 7 or 8 win team. And I think that's being generous because I'm just not seeing it right now. Now, maybe a lot of things happen between now and the start of the season, and I feel a little differently. But I'll tell you what's not going to change. You're still going to have the Houston Texans in your division. They're a better team. You're still going to have the Jacksonville Jaguars in your division. They're a better team. And from what we saw with up and down quarterback play, mostly by Gardner Minshew last season, the Colts might be a better team too.
Oh, I think the Colts are.
So I get it. You're making moves. I'm never going to fault a team for making moves, especially when I think the moves make sense. But at the same time, you're giving up a 3rd round pick for a great cornerback. But by the time you're ready to win, he's probably going to be 30. Best case, right? Best case scenario. So I don't know. Maybe they think they're closer than we think they are, but
I think they do. I think that they have more faith in young Levis and I'm not saying that Levis couldn't develop into a legit QB, but that's one of those kind of things that's in the balance, right? We don't know if Will Levis returns, Chris, and he's the same guy or pretty much the same guy as they were last year, and you look at the weapons they have on the outside. If you look at the backfield, remember, this is a sea change for him. Derrick Henry was there a better part of a decade, and he's gone. So I think that Tennessee made a great move, but I don't know if you totally reap the benefits, like you said, of that move. If the offense, let's say their defense is very good, I look at their offense and think at best it'll be middle of the road, if not, or worse. If the offense is nowhere near the defense, and you look at that division, like you said, 7 wins to me for Tennessee is a lot. I think it's a lot. So if Levis does develop and he becomes your guy, by what time will Sneed be 30, 31? Will Sneed even be on the team? Right? Like, that's a real thing. Remember, when you made that trade, one of the reasons why KC made it, they weren't going to pay him. So I'm assuming that they're going to go ahead, Tennessee, and give him that bag. Because if they don't give him the bag, he's going to leave them too.
And I understand what Chris is saying in the chat. I agree Tennessee has upside. I'm not as big on Calvin Ridley as others might be.
Yeah, don't lead with Tony Pollard. If that is one of your arguing points, you have lost the argument. Don't do that.
I'm also not that big on Pollard, but you can frame the Tennessee argument however you would like to frame it. I'm okay with that. But at the end of the day, there are some things that just don't change. Will Levis is at best the 3rd best quarterback in your division. He's not better than Trevor Lawrence, and he's not better than CJ Stroud. And now we're going to have a conversation of, Mo, is he better than Anthony Richardson? I don't know. Maybe he could be. I would argue that from what I've seen from the limited time that Richardson played last season and what I've seen out of Levis, he isn't. But if Levis makes strides and Richardson stays the course, might he be a little better next season than him?
Sure.
But when you're splitting hairs about whether your quarterback is the 3rd or 4th best in your division, what kind of conversation are we actually having? Are we having a playoff conversation? Because I feel that once you're talking about, well, he could be the 3rd best, I feel at that point we're not having a playoff conversation.
No, I think we're having so you're telling me there's a chance conversation.
Right, which is great. And we see this happen in the NFL. Every handful of years, there's a team that we think isn't going to do well. They catch lightning in a bottle. They win 9 or 10 games. They're a wild card team. Okay, maybe that happens for Tennessee next year. I don't see it. I think there's too much talent in their division and they're too far away from that talent. But we'll see what happens, Mo.
No, and we're not rooting against Tennessee Titan fans out there. This is just, remember, like Chris always says, hey, don't go by what we say. Don't go by what our picks. Where our picks aren't gold all the time. So please, by any means, disagree. That's what we're here for, to give our opinions. Feel free to disagree. If you're a Tennessee Titan fan, are you better off today than you were last season? I think you are overall.
Yeah, 100%. And again, they're doing what they need to do to put themselves in a position to get better. They brought in a playmaker, Calvin Ridley. You need a playmaker. I just said that. They brought in a cornerback. You need a cornerback. I just said that. They're checking off boxes. That's what they're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, Mo, and we know this, it comes down to quarterback play. And I honestly believe you have the worst quarterback in your division. And I don't know how that's a path to the playoffs if that holds true. So we shall see. Speaking of your division, the Indianapolis Colts are in the same division as the Tennessee Titans. And Mo, the Colts have been a big proponent during the offseason in trying to get the NFL to make a rule change in which everything that happens in the last 2 minutes of a game is reviewable. Specifically, penalties. Indianapolis lost the game in October this past season on a pass interference call late in the game that was clearly not pass interference, and they've been riding this train ever since. Well, Mo, it looks like the train died out long ago. The momentum to get this pass does not look like it's going to happen, and it does not look as though the owners are on board to make this change. Do you agree or disagree with the direction the owners are going in, which is we don't want to be reviewing everything in the final 2 minutes?
I'm with the owners, actually. I don't want to be reviewing everything in the final 2 minutes. Look, the truth of the matter is, I'm sure somewhere in the history of the Colts, somebody they played was the victim of a bad call late in the game that benefited them. Everything that's happened to everyone. It just is. I can't count how many times I'm like, how can you not see that? And you go crazy. But I don't think a massive rule change is needed. Look, referees, officials, they make mistakes. It happens. It's human error. But no, I you know what? Think about it, how great playoff football is late in the game. I don't want to have these long interruptions when you're sitting there for 10 minutes and it just dulls the game. I don't want that. I don't want that.
I'm not a big fan of stopping the game. It is what it is. I understand the human element of it. I understand that as a fan, as a league, you do not want games decided by calls that are clearly wrong. I understand that, but it's going to happen. There are going to be moments where people get it wrong. I do think the NFL, and let's be fair, Mo, the NFL has gotten better at this because what we've seen the last year or two is you'll see a flag thrown. And then before there's an announcement made, sometimes the flag is picked up. So you'll see a flag thrown. You'll see the officials come together. And then you'll see them come out from that huddle sometimes and be like, there is no penalty for blank.
And I love that.
And what's happening at that point is they're communicating. They're communicating about what's happening, what they saw. Sometimes the league is helping them out from New York. That did or that didn't happen. Sometimes they're being helped out from the booth. But what you're looking at is a flag is thrown. You're hearing the broadcast go, oh, they might have got so-and-so for pass interference. And in that 15 to 20 second window between the flag hitting the ground and the officials coming together and them addressing us, it is being reviewed. It's not an official review, but it is being talked about. And we've seen a lot more flags over the last couple of seasons be put back in the pockets. And they'll tell us there is no flag for pass interference. There is no flag for a legal man downfield. That's telling us that's what the flag was thrown for. There was a discussion about it, and we decided it wasn't that. And we move on. Mo, at the end of the day, there's holding on every play. At the end of the day,
it really is.
Most passing plays, if you want to nitpick it, there's probably pass interference somewhere. it's part of the game. It is what it is. I understand it. When it happens to my team, I'm upset about it. I'm cussing in the living room. How did you miss that? What do you like? I get it. But at the end of the day, when you take emotion out of it, it is what it is. They're human. They make mistakes sometimes. It's part of the game. There is no way to magically make it better, because what are we going to do? We're going to slow things down and watch it in, 100th or a 10th of a time that it took place in real life. That's not sports. That makes the games way too long. It's no need for it. I'm glad it didn't pass.
I am too.
Or is it going to pass?
The good and bad calls in sports, that's actually part of the sports experience, really. Believe it or not, you kind of live and die sometimes on those. No, don't change that. Don't do that. Don't change the game. I just think I like the thing that the NFL has gotten better at. Like you said, the officials come together and go, actually, I had a better angle. He didn't touch him. That's what they should do as much as possible on every bang bang play. But outside of that, no major changes need to be made.
One change that looks like it is going to be made, Mo, is the NFL wants to bring, quote, suspense back to the NFL kickoff. So it looks like they're going to change the NFL kickoff rules. This is gaining a lot of momentum the past week or so. There is a structure that is being outlined. And what it's going to look like is the NFL is going to basically use something the XFL used in 2020 and 2023. No, fans, I'm sorry. Not what the XFL used back in 1999, when the kickoff was basically a rugby scrum in the middle of the field. As exciting as that was the first time that I saw it, that is not what is going to happen in the NFL. But the gist of it is this. The rule change would see the kickers continue to kick off from the 35-yard line, while their other 10 teammates would move up to the receiving team's 40-yard line. At least 9 members of the return team would be moved up to the setup zone. The setup zone would be between the 35 and the 30, while up to 2 returners could line up in the landing zone, which would be from the 20 to the goal line. No players can move besides the kicker and the returners until the kick hits the ground or one of the players in the landing zone. So basically what you're doing is you're kind of pushing people a little bit closer together, but no one's allowed to move until the ball is received or the ball hits the ground. So even though the players are a little bit closer, they're at a standstill until the ball's in play. So what that's going to do, Mo, is that's going to reduce those high-speed collisions to a certain degree, because now you don't have players chugging down the field, ramping up that speed, and just barreling into you a second or two after you get the ball. Now they're basically standing there watching, waiting for you to touch it or hit the ground, then they're getting going. So it's going to create more on the special teams side. Oh, and by the way, Mo, it's also going to make special teams matter more. I think last year on average, teams were about 13,000 yards on kickoff returns. That's down from about 45,000 on average only about 10 years ago. So that's how dramatically the kickoff game has been reduced in the NFL. This is definitely going to open the door for the kickoff and return game to matter once again.
I think it's interesting, but what I'm more concerned about, with both teams being a little bit closer, that's going to make onside kicks a lot more interesting, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, think about that for a minute. You've cut the distance between both teams. Those will be more high collision because they're going to be closer, and it's going to be a squib of some kind anyway because it's an onside kick. Like, those are going to be really intense.
They're also talking about making kickoffs that hit the end zone on the fly for a touchback. Instead of going to the 25, it's going to go to the 30. So almost penalizing kickers for putting it into the end zone,
Right.
which is also interesting because now, and I know it's only 5 yards, the 25 to the 30, but let's not forget those things matter. There's going to be a bunch of analytics, Mo, halfway through next season if this thing passes, where it's like, what happens when they start at the 30 as opposed to the 25? How much do those 5 yards actually matter? Right. And you're going to see a shift. You're going to start to see people playing around with this idea of, well, can we get them to field it inside their 5-yard line and then force them to do something at that point? Do they want to try to run it back? Can we get pressure down? You know, that's going to be a real thing, Mo. And what does that look like? If they're fielding it inside their 5, are they even getting it back to their 30?
Right.
Or are we able to cover it? Because if more times than not, they're not even getting it back to the 30-yard line, well, let's start doing that. Let's start trying to pin them, at the 22 or the 23-yard line, as opposed to just giving up 7 or 8 yards at the start of every drive. That's important.
That's going to be the new thing.
I like when special teams matters in a football game.
It's become more strategic. You're right. And now kickers are going to be incentivized. Can you get it to the 2?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, can you get it to the 2 or around the 5? Like, because we can keep them from getting to the 30. And like you said, man, this just gives more work for the analytics guys. They're going to be out there like, well, I mean, it says that every time they started at 30, they score 9 times out of 10. And X amount of points are being scored. Like, yeah, I'm with you. I think special teams have always mattered, but it's going to make them matter even more with this new rule change.
Well, let's take a break from the NFL. We got some NCAA stuff to recap here. Let's quickly go through everything you might have missed when it comes to March Madness if you weren't paying attention. Before we hit the weekend, number 13 Yale knocked off number 4 Auburn. So if somehow your bracket survived day 1, if somehow you survived the Kentucky loss, well, Auburn was right there to be like, I'm not yet. We ain't done yet. We ain't done with the upsets quite yet. Right. If your bracket somehow is still alive, let me bust that for you real quick. So Auburn takes a dive. Number 4 losing to a 13. Number 12, San Diego State knocked off. Did I not put a number with that? San Diego State knocked off UAB. Then we had a little run here, Mo. We had a little run of 12 teams. So number 12, James Madison over number 5, Wisconsin. Number 12, Grand Canyon over number 5, St. Mary's. So 12 teams making a little run. And then we get to the second set of games. We get to the weekend. And for all the upsets that we saw in the first 2 days, Mo, once the weekend arrived, things kind of leveled off. Some normalcy returned in the form of good teams blowing the doors off of less talented teams.
Yeah, there was like 4 games like that where they just the game was decided before the second half.
Correct. There was a lot of blowouts over the weekend. If you're looking at the Sweet 16, really, it's NC State, the 11 seed. They knocked off the 14 seed Oakland in overtime. That was a great game. Exciting for both of those programs, having a chance to go to the Sweet 16 as a double-digit seed. But Mo, outside of that, the Sweet 16 is a lot of 1 through 5s. A lot of high seeds are left in the tournament right now.
Not surprising though. Like you said, eventually, as they say, cream rises to the top. But I've enjoyed the tournament. I watched a great game last night with Texas A&M versus I think it was Texas Tech versus just a great game. I thought the game was over, and they found a way to get it to overtime. The young man hits a 3 as time ran out to take it to overtime, and you thought they've got the momentum, but eventually the better team took over, just a stronger, more physical team. It's going to be entertaining going forward because I want to know, I'm curious to see if anybody can push Connecticut, if anybody can push UConn, because they look like a juggernaut right now.
And if you take a look at what we have coming up for the men's side of things, 6 Clemson, at 2 Arizona, 5 San Diego State, at 1 UConn. I don't particularly think that game is going to be close, but we shall see. 4 Alabama, at 1 North Carolina, 3 Illinois, at 2 Iowa State. Lots of low seeds still in here. NC State, that 11 seed we just talked about, they got number 2 Marquette, 5 Gonzaga, at number 1 Purdue, 4 Duke, at number 1 Houston. Houston had a surprisingly challenging game to get to the Sweet 16 as compared to the other number 1 seeds.
That's who I was talking about. It was Houston I watched last night. It was Houston that got taken to overtime. That was a great game. Look, the biggest game you mentioned, the one that's really standing out to me, the next matchup I want to see, Gonzaga versus Purdue? Because they got the big guy, Zach Edey. No one has been able to slow him down or guard him right now, Chris. Purdue's size has overwhelmed everybody they've played to this point. So I want to see if another team can either slow them down or impose their will and speed Purdue up, because so far nobody's been able to do that.
And then the other Sweet 16 matchup is number 3 Creighton at number 2 Tennessee. So the upsets are kind of subsided now. We got a lot of high seeds left in the NCAA tournament. So the question now is going to kind of shift to the 1 seeds. Will they continue their dominance in the Sweet 16 to make the push to the Elite 8? Or are we going to see someone kind of fall and have a hiccup? Mo, if you're looking at the 1 seeds, Houston and Purdue and UConn and North Carolina, of the 4, if you had to pick one to lose and not make it to the Elite 8, what are you looking at?
I think it might be Houston. They're incredibly physical and athletic, but they're a streaky shooting team. And when they can't make shots, especially in the half court when the game is slowed down, their offense gets stagnant. So if I were going to pick one that might struggle, it would be Houston.
Sticking with the NCAA, let's jump to the women's side here real quick, Mo. It's a tired conversation, but we're going to address it because we always address what's being talked about here on the morning show. We're going to talk a little bit about Caitlin Clark, and we're going to talk about the Bayou Barbie herself. So, Mo, a lot of conversation has come out from the start of the women's NCAA tournament in regards to how the nation is perceiving Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark when they get emotional and they get upset on the court. And the narrative is that they are not being received the same way. The Bayou Barbie herself, she has described herself as an emotional person. She has described herself as someone who wears her heart on her sleeve. And she has described herself as someone who's going to say whatever is on her mind in the moment if she feels it needs to be said. And people are looking at her and they're using words such as dramatic. They're using words as, whining and crying for calls and whatnot. But if you look on the other side of the court, the proverbial court, if you will, Caitlin Clark got a little fiery in her opening round matchup of the women's NCAA tournament as well, to the point where the camera shot to her dad, and her dad was telling her, knock it off. Get your head back in the game. Mo, is there a difference in the way that these two phenomenal female athletes are perceived?
I'm not sure. So they're different. Let's start there. They're different. Like you said, Caitlin Clark she was really fired up. It was one of those games where they were really trying to body her up, be really physical. And she kind of responded, and maybe they got in her head a little bit. And that's kind of out of character for her more times than not. Whereas the Bayou Barbie is a little bit more emotional. She stays fired up. I think she leads by that. That's part of her persona. That's who she is. So I don't know if they're being treated differently. I think they're just different. They're just different. The Bayou Barbie, in some ways, is a lot like her head coach. So she's very vocal. And she is going to say what's on her mind. And I think that's why they work so well together. Her head coach is never at a loss of words. So I don't think that they're being treated differently. I think, at least not by the officials. If you want to say that there are some fan bases that portray them certain ways, I think that's just fan bases. But I think fans in general don't look at them like that. I just see two great basketball players who are completely different personas.
Emma, I think that's a great point. You're talking about, and I like both women are phenomenal athletes. I think both women are doing wonders for the world of women's sports. But you have to understand that when it comes to the stuff aside from putting the ball into the hoop, they are built differently. And what I mean by that is, well, what is Caitlin Clark's nickname? Does she even have one? I'm not sure. We
Not
know
one
what
that I know of.
we
Not
know what
one I
we
know
know
of.
what Angel's nickname is.
Right.
And we know that recently she tried to trademark it and got upset when she couldn't trademark it, which, by the way, I'm sorry that nobody in your corner told you that you were going to have an uphill battle trying to trademark your nickname when there's already a trademark name within it. Like, you cannot go trademark the Barbie name. The Barbie name is already owned. You can't go out there and get your own Barbie trademark. But Mo, isn't that the point? Like, that's a persona. That is a character that she is playing. So, and you can say that character is very much real to who she is at the core of herself, and that's fine. But that's where I start this conversation. One of these athletes has a persona with a nickname that goes along with it, and a head coach, like you mentioned, who creates this environment that fits the persona of this character that Reese has created.
Correct.
So it all goes hand in hand. And then you look at the other program, and that's not what that program's about. That program isn't loud. That program isn't in your face. That program isn't filled with an outspoken head coach and other outspoken players. And that's how I look at it. You look at a situation where when Reese does something a little off color, or she's taunting someone, or she's in someone's face, or she's making comments, that's on brand for her. A brand that she has developed, a brand that she has leaned into over her college career. Caitlin Clark's brand is a little different. Neither is wrong. They're both making a ton of money. They're both very successful basketball players. But if Angel Reese got into a confrontation on the court, and then you tuned in to watch the post-game press conference because you wanted to hear what she said, and her response was very calm, very subdued. Just we had a little disagreement out there, and I went out there to midcourt, and I was really trying to offer my perspective to her. And like, you'd be like, what is she doing? Why is she talking like that? Like, what is going? It would be weird to you because that's not what you normally expect from her. Not saying that it's wrong. That's just not what her brand is, Mo. And when you look at Caitlin Clark, you don't often see big overreactions from her. And then, fine, I won't call it an overreaction because maybe that's a negative connotation. You don't see big reactions from her. Okay. So when she has a big reaction, you're like, ooh, why is she so fired up right now? Because you don't see that a lot. That's all it is. It's two athletes that have crafted different brands, and they both lean into the brand they've created for themselves, and they just have different brands. That's all.
That's all I see. I just see two different athletes with two completely different personas. And you hit on it. Angel Reese is very, very active on social media. And I'm sure Caitlin Clark's on social media, but not to the point that Angel Reese is. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying one is right or wrong. They're just different athletes with different personas. So you're going to view them differently. And like you said, if Caitlin Clark went out routinely and was constantly getting in the face of other people or wearing her emotion on her sleeves, that would throw you off because you'd be like, what's going on with Caitlin Clark? Because normally she's really more solemn. She's really more just laser focused, doesn't say a whole lot. And Angel Reese is more emotional, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. So I just think that anybody that has a problem with them, I don't get it because I think both great athletes are being who they are. And there's nothing wrong with that. in a lot of ways, they're also the product of the environment that they're in and who they're around. I think Angel Reese fits perfectly with her coach, Kim Mulkey. I say the same about Caitlin Clark and her coach.
Well, let's close out with this, a little more NFL stuff today. Sean McDermott was head coach of the Buffalo Bills. He was being asked about the success of the Bills and Super Bowl aspirations and some of the turnover difficulties they've had with Josh Allen, 32 turnovers in the past 2 seasons, but who's counting? Not me, obviously. He was asked about a few different things when it comes to the Bills and the narrative around them in the NFL. And one of the things that was brought up was people perceiving the Bills as a failure of a team because they have been placed into a Super Bowl window a few seasons ago. And now the narrative around them is good team, going to contend for the division, going to win the division, going to make the playoffs, but maybe not the Super Bowl caliber team we thought they were. And the play has kind of proven that, I would say. And McDermott pushed back a little bit. He pushed back and basically said, anyone who thinks that just because we haven't made it to a Super Bowl doesn't mean that we haven't been a successful team is pretty narrow-minded. That is the term that he chose to use. And Mo, I look at his comments and I there's two sides to it. I agree that if you're taking all things into consideration, a team that has won the division 4 or 5 years in a row and has been the class of the AFC East since Tom Brady left, a team that has been to an AFC championship game since Tom Brady has left, a team that has won playoff games and has had a quarterback who has been in the MVP discussion since Tom Brady has left. If you're going to look at what I just said and say that team's a failure, then I agree. You are very narrow-minded because there are a lot of teams in the league that if I went to them today in a quiet backdoor meeting and said, listen, you're going to need to sell me some things, but in return, I'm going to give you 5 division titles. I'm going to give you your quarterback is going to be in the MVP conversation. I'm going to give you an AFC championship game appearance. I'm going to give you multiple playoff wins. Mo, there are a lot of teams that would sign up for that today.
No question.
So if you're looking at Buffalo and just saying in general, they're a failure of a team, I agree. You are wrong and you are narrow-minded. But that's not how I look at it, Mo. I look at it and say, this is a team that is supposed to be a Super Bowl caliber team. This is a team that was supposed to be in a Super Bowl window. And if you look at it from that point of view, Mo, this team is a failure because you haven't made one. You can't come out and say you are a Super Bowl caliber team if you haven't actually made the Super Bowl. And that is where I have an issue because this is the same team that in their practice facility is raising banners of the Lombardi Trophy and all this other nonsense because that's where they're going. That's the kind of team they have. And I get it. Every team wants to be there, Mo. But I'm a Dolphin fan. The Dolphins aren't a Super Bowl team. I will tell you that all day. We need to win a playoff game before we start talking about Super Bowl aspirations. They haven't won a playoff game since 2001. So I'm not going to sit here as a Dolphin fan and be like, oh, because they did this, this, and this, I think they're a Super Bowl team. No. They need to win a playoff game. Baby steps. Well, Buffalo completed the baby steps, Mo. They got to the AFC title game. The next step was Super Bowl. They haven't been back to an AFC title game. So for me, that's a failure. Doesn't mean you're a bad team. Doesn't erase your previous success. But you have failed as a team that was supposed to be the biggest barrier to the Kansas City Chiefs winning a Super Bowl. As a team that was supposed to be Patrick Mahomes 1, Josh Allen 1A. That was what the world was talking about coming out of that AFC title game. And maybe you didn't want those expectations. Maybe you thought those were unfair. Maybe you were never going to live up to those. But that is the platform you were put on, and then you never took the next step after that.
So the coach is right in this sense. Have they been very good? Have they been relevant? Have they been one of the top teams over the past few years? They've got division titles. They've had a degree of success. And you would rather have their last 5 years than the Bears' last 5 years. Maybe the Bears' last 10 years. But so I understand. And they did have a window. This is a fact in sports. Teams have windows and they come and go. And more franchises, there have been a few that have been more successful in that view than others. Look, I'm a Niners fan. We make it to Super Bowls. We just don't win them anymore. So, that doesn't feel good either. Having said that, I look at Buffalo and I guess the coach is saying glass half empty or half full. I'm looking at it the other way and going, I think your window is closed. I don't think the Bills are going to be a bad team. Like you said, they're going to be good. They're going to be relevant. But your ultimate goal is always what? To win the Super Bowl. And do I think the Buffalo Bills, especially in this AFC that's quarterback rich, and one guy specifically in Kansas City, I don't think Buffalo, at least this iteration, the Josh Allen Buffalo Bills, I do believe, and this guy, obviously, he's at the top of his game, but I'm talking about the guys around him. I'm talking about his head coach. I think this iteration of the Buffalo Bills, I think their Super Bowl aspirations, I think it's over. That's what I believe. Now, they might be like, this guy doesn't know what we're talking about. We're going to go out and win 12 games, win the division, and do all. That could very well happen. But you and I don't judge the Buffalo Bills on what they do in the regular season. You and I judge them on what they do in the postseason. So when a Buffalo Bills fans go, well, we just won the division again, and Miami, you didn't win the division, and that's fair to say. But if you're a Dolphins fan, you can go, you've won the division. But just like us, you're at home.
Right.
You're at home too. Another division championship, but no Super Bowl appearance. So yes, he's kept them relevant. They're very good. And look, maybe the thing might be they might just need a new head coach. But I think in the bigger picture, your goal is to win a Super Bowl. Bill Belichick's long gone. Brady's long gone. And you guys took over the division, but you didn't take over the conference. You failed. It is Patrick Mahomes' conference. So in the bigger picture, you failed. You didn't win a Super Bowl. And I don't think the McDermott, Josh Allen, that marriage is going to end with a Super Bowl.
And when Mahomes didn't get there, you weren't the team that stopped him. That was Joe Burrow.
Yes, sir.
So even when you can't just sit here and be like, well, Mahomes, no one's going to derail that. It happened, though. He was stopped, and Burrow did it. So it wasn't even your guy when it wasn't Mahomes. You know what I mean? So it's not even a situation where it's like it's all Mahomes or nothing. No, when it wasn't Mahomes, it still wasn't you. So sorry, Buffalo. I mean, I'm not sorry. Maybe I am. I don't know.
You're a Dolphins fan. You're not sorry.
It's too early in the week to decide, Mo. It's too early in the week. Let's wrap it up on a Monday.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Chris and I Live. Check out all the great content that we have at the Wire to Wire Network. You're already listening to us. Give us a like, a sub, a follow. Any kind of support, we deeply appreciate. Wire to Wire Network. Check us out.
Make sure you check out Shohei Ohtani's comments this afternoon. We'll be breaking down all of that and more tomorrow morning. Coffee and Sports. It's the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network.